Let's
We're
call
good.
the meeting to order. Looking at the agenda and moving down it, I see no one here from the public. Therefore, we'll dispense with the public comment session. Let's move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes, board meeting and our workshop. We've all had the opportunity to review the same. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes.
Make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let's move on to item number 4. Again, in our packet, we've had the opportunity to review the vouchers for both the electric and the water. Are there any questions, additions, or corrections to the vouchers? Hearing none, again, I will ask for a motion, ask for a second for the approval of the vouchers.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let's move on to item number 5, and let's call on Mr. Fagan to review the monthly reports for the month of December.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For you, you've got the summary of the revenue and expenses for December. The electric department had a net income of $43,000, and the water department had a net loss of $93,000. Twice a year, since we are a bi-weekly payroll, twice a year we have 3 payrolls, and that really impacts the expenses that month in those departments. The electric department, that payroll, extra payroll is about $162,000 expense to the bottom line. In the water department, it's about $55,000 to $60,000 expense to the bottom line. If you look at the year-to-date numbers, the electric department, our sales are down about $1.7 million, but our power cost is down about $1.6 million. So that's about a $90,000 loss there over what we had forecasted to this point in the year. But our expenses are also down. Our operating expenses are also down about $285,000. That's why we have a $212,000 ahead of the forecast at this point in time. The water department, as I've said before, the summer sales in the water department with all the rain we had really hit us hard. So our water revenue is down about $100,000 over what we anticipated. But our expenses are also down about $76,000 from where we'd forecasted them to be. So overall, we're only about $24,000 behind the forecast at this point in time. I would like to show you this here. Since we're talking about the weather and how it impacts you, and you may have had some people talk to you about how high their bills are. The blue represents this year, the red represents last year, and the yellow represents the 10-year average. These degree days, the way they work, if you look at the first day of the month, you take the max, that's the high for the day. You take the min, that's the low for the day. You add those two together and you divide them by 2, so that would be 34 divided by 2, 17. And then it's what the difference is what it takes to get to 65 degrees. So for that day, there's 48 degree days. If you add those up for the month, of December, you're going to have 950, whereas last year we had 558. And we have customers call in all the time and say, well, it was no colder this year than it was last year. Well, yes, it was, and these numbers come from the National Weather Service in Morristown, so they're accurate. If you look right here, our average monthly temperature for January here was 34 degrees. Last year, it was 46 degrees. That's a big difference in what it does to your electric bill. If you look down here, the low temperature, the days that hit 32 below or below, it was 22 days this year. It was only 10 days last year. And if you look over here at where the maximum, the high for the day was 32, we had 8 days in January where it never got above 32 degrees. Last year you had 2. So what the customers remember a lot of times is this 64-degree day. I remember wearing shorts and playing golf that day. Well, they forget about all these days that it was cold, and they say, there's no way I use that much electricity. But we had a ton of meters tested today, about 70 meters tested today. Not one meter was inaccurate. They were all on. They always want to think it's the meter. It's not. It's just the fact that it was so cold. And the colder it gets, the more your efficiency of your unit drops. So it really adds up. So I just wanted to show you that. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless anybody has any specific questions.
And that's exactly what we're opening the floor up for. Comments and/or questions. Since I hear none, again, I'll ask for a motion and ask for a second.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Thank you, Mr. Fagan. Let's move on to item number 6. And as is the usual, that's on our project status report. Normally, we begin, pardon me, with the electric. So, Ernie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your project status report for your electric department is shown. All these projects are proceeding as planned, according to Hull, as they say. On time. I had no reason to believe any of them are out of line in terms of money, so no big surprises there. I won't go through each one, but if you have any specific questions about any one of them that you're wondering about, I'll be happy to answer that. Before I relinquish the floor, Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions, I would like to touch on an item on the virtual power plant.
And we'll ask for any questions, and then obviously we'll let you do just exactly that. Are there any questions?
Thank you. I want to take just a second to highlight this because it is noteworthy. We have 2 records that occurred in January. The first, this 10,820, the amount of load reduction that we realized through our dynamic voltage reduction system. That is a record since we've started this system in April of 2011. So that in and of itself resulted in a savings of over $109,000 to our wholesale and through our bottom line. And due to that, this 137,536 for the total contribution of all of the components of the virtual power plant, that too is a single month record for the virtual power plant. Next month, unless something completely ridiculous happens, we will break $6 million in savings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm kind of the dollars and cents guy, and I went through there and I said that virtual power plant saved every single customer $4.61 on the month. So, I mean, you know, you annualize that, that's between $55 and $56 a year savings to each and every customer. So, you know, pretty significant in my opinion.
Our friend Dan,
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I know we're going to call on you on this, Greg, since Dan's
he has
flu bugs got him.
This project has been going on for quite some time, and we have it's really designed to clean and repair and paint the clarifier mechanisms. We've already got in place the large gear drives. They've got a scum baffle on there that's already in play. We've got ductile iron that we're replacing in there. It's 24-inch ductile iron, and it's over 10 feet deep, so we've got Giles to help us with that. And that some of that, what we're replacing, that piping, we're repurposing that. And as we travel on from that 24-inch, our crews are repurposing that. We're going to build a new building over this piping equipment, and we should be finished by our projected date of June of this year.
Any questions and/or comments? Okay, if not, let's move on to item number 7 on our agenda. I assume you're gonna talk on that.
Yes, I
Greg,
am.
Which is, work order 781-S for, wastewater improvements.
Are improvements that became necessary as we tried to accommodate the increases in wastewater in our Eagle Bend Industrial Park. And we designed several ways to do this, if you'll remember, and a lot of that was predicated on the assumption that 3M was going to build out as they originally asked for us to accommodate, and that would take a river crossing. Well, because of several factors, they delayed that. And now Eagle Bend Manufacturing and others, as they're ramping up, we are now feeling pressure on how to transport that to our wastewater treatment plant. So with the river crossing out, which would be a new force main, we had to channel that through our city. And to do that, there are bottlenecks through that process that we had to address and repair. So once that became evident that we were going to have to expend a lot of money to do that, we asked our friends, Tim Thompson, to see if he could work with us with some of these and leverage some of these expansions to get us some grant money. And he was very successful in doing that, which got us a 25% match at $365,000 through ECD. So we went out for bid and anticipating, we did an engineering report and we went out for bid on that, and all three bids came back in excess of what the engineering estimate was. So we worked with ECD and were able to adjust, that grant money to the maximum of the 365 that they allowed. So given that, we are in a position now to award to Design Construction Services a $443,000 award bid. And once we get that, because we put some contingencies in there, some options. For example, one of our pump stations, number 18, is going to need and be addressed of some maintenance. And we thought, well, we've got the grant, we're going to make sure we play this out as hard as we can. We're able to take some of those things off. I didn't want to expose the department to more than $100,000, or right in that range of $100,000 for matching. So we believe that with this award, even at the 443, with the 10% contingency in there, since it's unlikely that we'll reach that, we do believe that number can be at the final. We're going to be down close to what we had hoped for to begin with, and still participate in that $365,000 grant. So this work order has, and I'll be asking for the award to the contractor after this, but it includes that award price of $443 with the engineering and design through C2RL and the contingencies associated with that, and then we net this grant of $365 out of that, so the maximum exposure to us on this work order is $163, and we do believe we're going to be able to address that more favorably going forward. So I ask then that that the board approve 781S for these improvements to our collection system.
Was this, will this be an unbudgeted project or?
No, this was in the budget.
Okay.
We did have this in the budget.
Is that-
Greg, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Is that grant to be paid back, or is it low interest?
No,
What is
no, that is a, we have to have what we call local match to that. So it's really good for us. They'll put in 75% up to a maximum of 365,000. So if we were significantly under that, they wouldn't, our match would just be 25%, and they wouldn't do the 365. We believe we're going to hit that ceiling of 365. If we go over that calculation, then our local match is going to expand. That's essentially how that's going to work, but we'll get that free and clear.
Okay, that's good.
Greg, who does the contracts from a legal aspect between CUB and our contracting work?
A C2RL, who's a consulting firm, does that.
Most of these are boilerplate, typical industry.
By the way, you gotta
work
get bonded, you gotta,
contracts.
you know,
The
you gotta go through all of the
language is
federal, because
copy
the
and
grants,
paste.
the grants are so restrictive. So that, you know, you have to meet all of those requirements for the grants, and then the agency has to approve that kind of contract also.
Any other questions? If there are no additional questions or comments, then I would ask for a motion and a second for the approval of the work order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign? Let's move on then to item number 8, which is the award, excuse me, for the upgrades to the wastewater pumping station. Mr. Fay.
We had, as I said, through our consulting firm C2RL, these 3 bids, and you can see that, and we've done business with design and construction services before, and very positive. So, I mean, our personal experience with them is very good, and C2RL has done a lot with this company, and it's all been very, very positive. So we're excited that that they're going to be awarded this project. But you can see a lot of it depends on how much appetite these companies have for this kind of work and where their load schedule is, because they'll do it, but they'll put a premium on it. So we were, even though it was high, I'm glad that it has now come in reasonable, in the reasonable margin. So I would recommend that we award this to the lowest and we consider the best bid received to design and construction services.
Any questions or comments?
So, Greg, we've worked with them before.
Yes.
We like them.
We like them a lot.
We know them. We're
We do.
comfortable. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Then we need a motion and a second to award the contract.
Motion.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by like sign? All right, that moves us on to item number 9, which is other business. At which time do we want to have Mr. Bowles talk about Blizzard?
No, not yet. Not if that's
No,
all right.
not yet.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Holding
Okay.
him off.
Well, let's hold him off. Okay.
He's raring to go down there.
I think he looks like he's jumping. I mean,
We received a call, I just want to let you know, we received a call from ACWA, and they informed us that they were not, NOT, able to meet the water demands at our I-75 industrial park. And they requested CUB to provide them between 150 and 200,000 gallons of finished water from our treatment plant. We can do this, we can easily do this, and I've directed Dan to reconnect to ACWA through our metered connection point that we historically had. Remember, we had ongoing issues with them and with the contract, you know. So, good for them, there's a contract in place that's reciprocal, so we'll be able to provide them, we think, with the water that they say that they need. But this strengthens our hand because as I told you, I've already been on the move to work with the state in order to get grant money that would provide us the ability to cross the river and to take our water line up to the interstate area, which will include the I-75 industrial park. I want CUB to be able to control that water instead of ACWA. So there won't be these wild fluctuations in rates or outages or slowdowns or anything else. So just to let you know that in the very near future, we'll reconnect with ACWA and we'll be providing them with up to 200,000 gallons of finished water a day right out of this plant. Obviously, we'll be charging them for that too. Then, on when I see and have a sense that it may be a shorter board meeting than usual, and then I'll also accept whatever the reality of that comes. I wanted to provide you, because I thought it would be a good follow-up to our workshop, to periodically highlight for you what I consider quantitative contributions that are routinely made by the leadership team. And I will occasionally bring to the board the attention on a timely manner, because I don't want to be talking about stuff 3 years old or 5 years old. This would just be things that happen between the last board meeting and this board meeting, and that's what I mean by timely. So they won't be gigantic, but I think that they'll be indicative of what we do. So these timely actions will all have to be attributed, and that's what I'm going to bring you, to actions or contributions that are from members of my team, my leadership team, that through their exceptional diligence, work ethic, and skill set have either, and this is the criteria I'm using, have either impacted the quality of service we provide, represent CUB either nationally or across the valley, teaching CUB success, stories, and methods, and sharing our best practices, improving our bottom line, essentially saving us money, or uniquely distinguish themselves in such a way that I think deserves the recognition of the board. And I'm going to do a better, like I say, trying to do a better job of keeping you up to speed, because this stuff is routine for us and it flies by. But I've got two examples, and Ernie's Flizzer's going to be one. As you know, this advanced metering infrastructure that we have, what we call the AMI system, is an integral part of our grid, smart grid. And periodically, it's necessary for us to upgrade our interface software. As part of our planning, realizing an upgrade would be necessary this fiscal year, and for budgetary purposes, we acquired a quote from Aclara, which is our AMI vendor, and it was for $10,000 in the spring of last year to upgrade this software. Periodically, you've got to do it. Those of you who have Microsoft understand that. When we were ready to purchase and install this upgraded software, which was several weeks ago, or right at the turn of the year, the new number provided by Aclara was $25,000. $10,000 in the spring of last year, $25,000 in January of this year, 2.5 times what they originally quoted, or $15,000. When we pushed back, we were told there was a mid-year price increase. When we continued to push back, we were told there was nothing that could be done to get us back to the $10,000 quote that they gave us in April. Now, an average employee would not have questioned the $25,000 invoice because we needed the software. They would just paid it. After all, it's not their money. Just write the check. A superior employee, I believe, would have pushed back till they heard nothing else can be done. Then they would have paid the $25,000, but an exceptional employee would have fought this tooth and nail, and that's what we did, and I want to tell you how that went down. After we additionally engaged them with pressure, we crafted and sent a very direct email to Aclara reminding them how we, CUB, traveled across the country presenting our smart grid solutions, because we were invited to do that, because we are unique in having that. And we routinely tout Aclara as a principal component of our smart grid, and how unfortunate it would be for our messaging to change as a result of this bad experience. That apparently got through because on the 29th of January, we received an email from the regional director of Aclara informing us of a new quote, now of $15,000 for the upgrade, which is a $10,000 reduction. And they were right then, they couldn't get back to the 10,000, but they got to the 15,000. Of course, we pushed a little more, and in addition to that, we're receiving a $5,000 credit memo on our annual maintenance support agreement. So effectively, it returns us back to our $10,000 quote, the 10 plus the $5,000 credit. And that saves CUB $15,000. And that's all Ernie and Todd. That's not a lot of money in the big scheme when you look at the millions of dollars that runs through here, but it's indicative, I think, of the tenacity that we have in protecting every dollar that we get. My second timely thing, because it involves an event and something that we're doing based on our fault location, isolation, sectionalizing, and restoration, FLISR. You know, what we have, it's really a phase 2 of what you may recall that we did, I think, in May. And Ernie, and it won't take long. It's very informative, and I think that it is worth your time because it begins a process of educating you and understanding of what some of the unique things that we're doing.
I think we need a new acronym, FLISR.
I know, I call it Blizzard, you know, but I agree.
It's been Fizzler and everything.
Yeah,
I
that's
never
right.
know what it's
Fizzler-
gonna be.
Fizzler like a Twizzler, I do that too.
Yeah, Twizzler, you know.
Sizzler makes you think of steakhouse.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, it is what it is. It is, if you want to go the long route, fault location, isolation, sectionalizing, and restoration. And for the sake of updating, and as Greg says, freshness, because this event that I'm going to share with you happened between board meetings, and for the benefit of Zach Farah, who was not here in May when we first introduced to you our FLISR scheme. We thought it would be worthwhile to spend just a few minutes. We're not going to go through all the little truck rolls and stuff in the detail, but we're going to review briefly that, and we're going to accentuate what has happened here in between board meetings, just to bring you up to speed. So briefly, our system, we have about 30,000 customers. We have a little over 1,500 miles of high voltage line. Now think about that, 1,500 miles. It is a lot of line. 12 electric substations, 47 active circuits, and we serve in parts of 6 counties. I wanted to also emphasize that our topography and our customer density defines us more like an electric cooperative that's all spread out all over the place than a municipal electric system. And that is important to realize because the reliability numbers for an electric cooperative are generally much worse than for a municipality. And our reliability numbers are right in with the best of the municipalities.
Municipalities often serve within their city limits, Oak Ridge, Sevierville, you know, and things like that. You could shoot a 22 across their system, and so they have a lot less tree problem, where we've got miles of nothing but open road and trees, which is why Ernie said we look like a co-op. We're serving in parts of 6 counties, as co-ops do.
As we outlined for you in May, when we introduced FLISR the first time, all utility systems are very similar in the facilities and the type of equipment that they have. What distinguishes one from another is the technology that you put into behind the scenes with these pieces of equipment. Typical utility system, and this is again pictures just from our own system that are in the field today, not unlike what you would see if you drove to Knoxville, and restoration efforts on this type of a system where you have a automatic breaker, just like a breaker panel in your house, only this one can reclose. It can try to close back if it trips. This is a manual switch out here on the line. This is an automatic reclosing device. If we had a mainline event, such as a car wreck in this area right here, everybody on the feeder is out of service. However many customers are served are out of service because this breaker will open. We then have to send a crew out. They have to open this switch. We can get this many customers back on. From here to the end of the line will remain out until the line is fully repaired. That is indicative of the type of operation that all electric utilities have. We introduced Flizzer to show you, though, a better way to do this, and we highlighted the fact that these smart endpoints, if you will, these smart switches, we wanted to limit a single event scenario to an average of 200 customers or less. Okay? So how do we do that? We have to have a lot of technology involved in that. We furthermore wanted to do that, and we didn't even want to have to touch it. We didn't want our people to have to think about it. We didn't want decisions to have to be made. We wanted the system to be smart enough to do it itself. Thus, Flizzer, and we'll go through an actual event that occurred on the system for illustration purposes. You might recall in May that there was a tree that fell out on Clinton Highway between Clinton and Claxton. And I have a picture of that here in a minute. But it resulted in a circuit outage affecting 1,455 customers from our river substation, this particular breaker. This is a schematic, if you will, of our live system, exactly the way it is out there. So let me step through that just to refresh your memory of what occurred and how Flizzer reacted. When the tree fell, you can see the picture of the broken pole, and there were 4 broken poles associated with this event. At that moment, we had 1,455 customers without power. After 17 seconds and without any human intervention whatsoever, Flizzer had opened this switch, closed this breaker back, and we were down to only these 2 line sections totaling 339 customers without electric service. At the 53-second point, Flizzer had opened this switch, closed this switch, and now we were down to 195 customers out in under 1 minute. Once our crews then arrived, we were able to do manual isolating and get it down to less than 5 customers because the outage took until early the next day to fully correct. So hopefully that gives you some idea behind the power of what the benefits of this system and the improvement to service reliability over any typical utility system. I threw this up not because Charles was really squinting to try to read it the last time, but we didn't go through any of it, but just I wanted to show you, number one, this is not a kindergarten type exercise. There are a lot of logical steps and if-thens and scenarios that we have to pre-program into how this system reacts. Recall that I mentioned when we introduced Flizzer, we said we were in the first phase. We hope to get all that finished by the fall of 2017. I am proud to report that we did get all of that finished by the fall of 2017. So phase 1 of Flizzer is fully implemented, working, active, installed, and has worked numerous times since just the May exercise that I showed you here. I did mention at the time we wouldn't sit on our laurels, and we were going to go to a second phase. And as you can see by the fact there's a lot more boxes here, it is much more complicated, much more involved, because in this phase we're going to look at a full substation restoration, not just a breaker, But the whole in-feed from TVA, if we lose service to a substation, we want the same automatic high-speed restoration that we have at the feeder level. Well, we started programming on that and working on that in the late fall over the holidays, and we focused our efforts on our largest substations first. And the first substation that we got installed is our River substation, which is over here in South Clinton. Has a total of 5,172 of our 30,000 customers on it, so a very significant share. It has the 6 active breakers, and they intertie to the rest of the system as shown right here. On January the 22nd, TVA had a problem with their transmission system, and service was lost to this substation by TVA. Fortunately, this was the very first programming on phase 2 that we had implemented and tested, and we were ready for it like a mousetrap. So I want to walk you through what happened, and that is that when TVA lost service, of course, all these folks were out. There's no question
See,
about it.
that's a lot of Clinton in there, is.
A lot of, in all of South Clinton.
Right.
Okay? Now, TVA, much like all other utilities, has what we call a reclosing cycle. If you will, a tree falls and hits a line, and right then it causes a short circuit, and the breaker opens, so electricity is shut off. But if the tree were to fall on through to the ground, the breaker recloses, tries again, and if the tree is cleared the line, service is back on. So we wait in the program to let the system work itself out, get through those reclosing steps. That takes 60 seconds when we know it is a TVA-initiated issue. The system recognized that because it's programmed for it, and 60 seconds later, Flizzer opened all 6 breakers. Now, why did we do that? We did that because in anticipation of restoring service, we did not want power to flow through the breaker and back onto the TVA system, which may ultimately be flowing to a conductor on the ground or something.
Essentially, we cut off TVA then from River. And we don't, when we waited 60 seconds, we weren't notified that TVA was out. Our system recognized TVA was out, and that put the timer on internally.
Yeah, totally hands-off. This has all happened automatically, pre-programmed, hands-off. Breakers opened, set the stage for Flizzer to begin, and 5 seconds later, Flizzer detected the largest outage customer, which was 1455. Boom, had service restored by closing this switch right here. At the 22-second point, Flizzer picked out the next circuit. We're down to 2,800 customers without power. 33 seconds, picked out the next circuit. We're now down to 1,354 customers without power. And then finally, at the 37-second point, after we waited for TVA to clear, all of the CUB customers were restored. So this verbiage here about no sustained outages, I want to just touch on that. The industry, our electric utility industry, the standards that we all work by recognize a permanent outage as an outage that occurs and lasts at least 300 seconds or more, 5 minutes. Any outage that happens within that 5-minute zone and is subsequently restored is considered to be part of this chain of events of trying to do reclosing. Therefore, it's not considered a permanent outage or a sustained outage. So when we do our reliability calculations, as we compare with the rest of the country, this is not even considered an outage. So our system performed to correct a loss of service from our power supplier affecting over 5,000 customers in 37 seconds, leaving us with zero outage. I think that's pretty darned impressive. Now, I do want to mention this. In the nation, there are over 2,000 public power utilities serving over 49 million customers. 49 million customers. Our 30,000 customers in our CUB area are the only customers of the 49 million that have a system where Flizzr is fully deployed all over the system, and we are now embarking on large-scale restoration at the substation level. According to the Electric Power Research Institute, we're the only known utility to have harnessed this technology. I can tell you, in that building and in this building right here, there are a lot of people very proud of that fact. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
I'm very impressed. I mean, I was impressed the first time I heard it, but after seeing a real result, that's great.
One is a circuit and the other is the feeder. That's where we really wanted to expand to when we lost the whole sub, because historically, it's a crew in a truck. And depending on when it happens, you gotta call them in. So they drive in, then they drive out there, they gotta figure out what's going on, then they've gotta open for the feeder coming in before they try to do anything, and the balancing. When Flizzr was looking on how to, first of all, it looks to where am I gonna get the biggest bang for the dollar, it goes to the biggest load. And then it has to balance how much is on there, which is why there's even a little bit of a pause, because it doesn't want to knock anybody else out if too much comes on at one time. If it opened it all up at one time, it would spike, and that in itself could throw, a breaker out. So it is very impressive, and that, because it's timely, and it just happened, and it is phase 2 of this very impressive system. I thought, we didn't take too much time, I hope, but it gives you an appetite for what we do and what we're capable of doing.
It hopefully validates that we have done what we said we were going to do, and now have even taken it to the next level. And one shout out to Todd, who is integral in assisting me and working with me and helping to make all this a reality. He deserves a tremendous amount of credit.
Did we buy the program or did we create the program?
We created the program,
Wow.
and we're continuing to create. We're not designing software, we're writing code to manipulate.
EPB got $112 million. This is Chattanooga. Got $112 million, a grant from the government to enable them to go on this type of a system, because they wanted to pilot what's called a smart utility. You see, and EPB has got, they are very cutting edge, but that's the only thing. They're the only ones, and of course we didn't get $112 million. We didn't get 40 cents on this thing, but we're rocking right through that. So, and many utilities can't have this, even if Ernie downloaded the code and sent it to them, because we have been working for like 5 or 6 years, because it costs money to put these automatic switches out on the system. So we don't contract this. We have our people buying what I like to call, we make contributions every year to buy the hardware, and then as time goes in, we set it out, and we started setting up 5 or 6 years ago. It's been that.
Yes, well, even the backbone, Greg, which I've failed to mention when we were on the Flizzr, but obviously what really drives it is the communications. We have to be able to talk to these devices, and the contract that we got with Comcast is a backbone of enabling that communication. Without that, if you cannot communicate with the devices, you don't have a smart device.
So like I say, it's a domino it's Legos that are all hooked together. But the bottom line is, we didn't borrow money for this. This was a contribution every year, because if we got all of the equipment in one year, we don't have the manpower to put it up anyway. So we bought equipment and we hung it, we bought equipment and we hung it, we bought equipment and we hung it. And then when we had a certain area and a section, the code was written and tested, and then once we had one up and working, then we replicated that into the other breakers in order to make that kind of thing happen. So,
The EPB solution too, if I might add, is a vendor-based solution that is very generic in how it works. Ours is a customized solution to our system.
That's good.
that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
What I normally do, I start on one end to the other. I'm gonna start down. Mr. Farah, any
Nothing to-
questions?
No, nothing to add.
Mr. Price?
Just a general question that I found out that I don't know as much as I should know in this job. Is there documentation somewhere that explains the role of the board, the duties, responsibilities, exposures, how we relate to the city, how we relate to the management team?
There's the municipal code, I think would be a good place, and I mean, I'd be glad to send you that.
Okay.
We had that, some of that in the workshop.
Yeah,
But I-
that's what made me think that there
I'll-
must be
I'll send
documentation
you
out
a-
here that I need to see.
What we can do, can we not upload that and just put it on the board pack? Everybody can have it. Sure.
Sure.
Chairman, I did have a question. I apologize. Does this board have E&O
Yes.
live coverage?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see that in our, and obviously that's something, like you say, Zach, that wasn't something we've discussed in the last, 2 meetings, pardon me, but, is in our, insurance packet and will be voted on and approved for budgetary purposes in June.
No, I just want to reiterate this. I'm impressed with what you shared tonight, and I like the idea of Mr. Fay that we're going to do that so we can keep abreast of what all the good things are going on.
We're going along, we can just push it to the next meeting, but, we won't have everything all the time, but when we do, in that way, you don't try to digest it all in one sitting.
I've got 2 comments. Number one, I think the time discussing Flizzer was time well spent. And number 2, on behalf of all of our bosses ultimately, who are the people that we supply power to, thank you for the technological advances that we have made, and thank you for what will be made in the future, because I know this is an ongoing and continuing effort.
And a team effort, very much a team
And
effort.
it is, I know it's a team effort. And thank you, and no other comments, we are adjourned.